I'm extremely excited to talk to Mr. Ashutosh Garg today on my 149th episode, 100 Trends Literature series. And I'm Neeta Aneja, and your host for today. In fact, Trends Literature series has touched one and all. We have covered around 150 writers and sincerely dedicated to literature, authors, and thought leaders. It's been a unique platform to connect authors with the genuine readers. In fact, we're really honored to have Mr. Ashutosh Garg today. He's a name to reckon with his 25 years in corporate sector before quitting to form the much renowned Guardian Pharmacy in India, which was he formed in 2003. And it grew to be the second largest pharmacy chain in India with hundreds of stores all over. Mr. Garg is a certified business and executive coach, and he mentors several CEOs around the world on business matters, governance, strategic planning, succession planning, personal accountability, people, and cultural issues. He's also served as a director of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, headquartered in Geneva. In fact, much earlier, he was also recognized as global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum, Switzerland. And he's an author with already 9 most acclaimed books. His latest is 7 Chakras of Management, Ancient Wisdom from Indic cultures, Indic scriptures. And he writes regularly for various online publications. Most welcome, Mr. Garg. Lovely to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Neeta, for inviting me. I've seen several of your podcasts. I think you do an amazing job of bringing authors to the audience. I'm most grateful to you that you've given me the opportunity to talk to you about my latest book. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It's really an absolute honor. So what really inspired you to connect the concept of chakras with business management? I mean, this is really interesting and a very interesting book. I must show everyone. And a must buy.
Thank you, Neeta. So I'll explain this more from the perspective with a little story or an anecdote. When the pandemic started in 2020, a friend of mine from the US sent me a link to a program on Hinduism from the Harvard Divinity School in the US. And I've always been wanting to explore different religions. So I said, let me register. And then I found that it's a 7-module program covering the 7 major religions of the world, which are Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, and then there is Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So I did this 8-month program, and the reason the first 4 that I spoke of are called Indic is because they come from India.
Yeah.
So that was one part of the knowledge that I wanted to acquire. The second part, as you mentioned very kindly in your introduction, I've spent all my life in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur or as a business person. So I said that the 7 chakras in a human body are the 7 nerve points in our bodies, whether it's our head, or, the crown, the third eye, the throat, heart, solar plexus, sacral, or root chakra. And these are the 7 chakras. And I said the same 7 chakras can be correlated with 7 nerve points of an organization, small or large. And that is how I started the whole process of putting this together. And that resulted in my book.
It's a fantastic book. I read somewhere that you took around 2.5 years to write this book. So how was the journey writing this, and how was it really different from the other books that you've written? I mean, this sounds very interesting, and it is interesting because I've gone through.
So let me again give you anecdotally, when I wrote my first book, which was 130,000 words, and that was The Buck Stops Here, my journey from a manager to an entrepreneur. I wrote that book in 90 days because that was a book about my own journey, and that book did exceedingly well. This book, on the other hand, needed far more research, needed far more understanding. I relied basically on 5 different texts: the Vedas, the Upanishads,
Yes.
Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the Gita.
Yes.
And then, of course, I relied on a lot of the thoughts of Chanakya,
Yeah.
who is probably one of the finest thinkers we have ever had in our country from 320, 328 BC. So all that research, all the thoughts that were there, that whole process took me 2.5 years to complete the book.
But how was your background as a management expert? I mean, we all know about your 25 years in corporate culture and then forming Guardian. How did it really, really influence the writing of this book? I'm very keen to know that. And
Yeah,
the
so
way you've written, it's in like a layman's language. You've made it so simple for everybody to go through. There are no hard jargons. You can go through it. You can revise your Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana in such a consolidated form as well in the second part of your book. So, who were you keeping in mind? I mean, it's really simple, very well written. Yes, please.
That's very kind of you to say, Neeta. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted this book to be read and understood by the young people. And what also always happens, when you come to my age, and I'm now 67, when you come to now my age, and when you reach 60s, you want to be able to discover your own roots. But and I remember, when I was growing up, my mother used to tell us stories and so on about from our scriptures. But what I always found very difficult to understand was Sanskrit. So I still don't speak Sanskrit, but I did, read about the transliteration of all our texts in great detail. And I said, let me try and make it easy to understand for everybody. And therefore, I wrote in a way that I have always written, which is a simple, easy, flowing language, which people are able to relate with. I also had my little 2-year-old granddaughter in mind. She not relevant to her today, but I said 5-6 years from now, if she does start to ask about stories, here is a book that she may be able to relate with. And therefore, my first dedication on my dedication page is to my granddaughter, Vani.
So very right, because it's, as I mentioned, it's going to benefit a lot of people. And I think that's been the exercise of whatever you've been doing in the real recent past, even your podcast, the brand called You. I mean, you're imparting a knowledge, and that's such a great thought because you have so much new to be able to tell people. And I mean, it's been like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One of the most questions, because you just mentioned that the influence of Indic scriptures in your book, the prominent ones, the Ramayana and everything. Like I must mention to everyone that you've really described Gayatri Mantra so well, and you've mentioned that there's so many gods. I personally chant Gayatri Mantra so many times, and as you've mentioned, in times of focus, getting listen. I've told my children also, whenever you have a big exam, you have to recite it to get less stressed. But can you really explain how the principles from Indic scriptures are really relevant to modern business practices?
Absolutely. So, I think what is very important for us to understand, Neeta, is that our scriptures live with us.
Yes.
There's none, as Hindus or as people who follow any of the 4 Indic scriptures, there is nothing like you have to follow one particular book. And therefore, what I wanted to do was to be able to relate experiences that each one of us has. So by way of example, if you look at challenges that we all face, in the corporate world, what is motivation? What is delegation and empowerment? What is success? These 3 topics I've covered in the Mooladhara Chakra or the root chakra. And I've said that there is a lot to learn in each one of these. Another one, for example, and I'll give a little more detail on this one, is say anger management. Now, managing anger is something which, I have classified in the Manipur chakra or the solar plexus chakra. But what I've attempted to say is that there are 2 instances in our scriptures when our gods got angry. One is when Lord Ram was waiting to cross over from India into Sri Lanka to bring Sita ji back. his Vanar Sena was trying to build the bridge, and every time they put a stone, it would sink. So for 3 days, he waited trying to do that. And he'd sent Lakshman and say, Varun Devta se jaake pucho ki, we want to be able to build the bridge. And he wasn't coming. On the third day, he got angry and he said, bring my bow and arrow, and I'm going to fire the Agnivan and dry up the ocean. Now, that was his anger. But the moment he said that, Varun Devta was there, and he just said that, just write Ram on every stone, and that stone will float. Classical example of anger. Nothing wrong with anger, but it's important for us to say, well, how does anger manifest itself in different kind of situations, and what do we do about it? The same thing is with Lord Krishna. So I can keep talking stories.
Yeah.
There's another very important aspect, and that is, and I love talking about this in all my conversations, is this whole concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The world has suddenly started talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. When the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were, announced by the United Nations. I've been saying that we've had diversity, equity, inclusion in our scriptures for thousands of years. And one classical example are the 7 stars, the Saptarishi, as we call it in our country, or the Big Dipper or the Great Bear, as it's called in the Western world. There's a twin star constellation, which is Rishi Vashisht and his wife, Rishika Arundhati. It's twin star. They revolve around each other, unlike most other planets, where like Earth, the moon revolves around the Earth. These 2 stars, they revolve around each other. So even today in parts of India, after a wedding has been completed, the priest takes the couple out, points in the sky and say, look at the 2 stars there. You have to be equal. There's no disparity between men and women. So there is so much knowledge in our scriptures, and we just have to keep on learning every day from them.
The best part is that you've related all the 7 chakras, which are so essential, and you've really made everyone understand what are those, because for one, you keep on reading about chakras, most important ones, but you don't really know. So you've kept that also in mind. Coming to root chakra, you just mentioned other things, but how do you think it really provides stability and security in a business setting?
So the root is the base.
Yes.
Now you can relate this base to what I have done, which is, your motivation, delegation, empowerment, which leads to success. Or you can also say root is the chakra, is the one that provides the stability to an organization. Or you can say the root is what provides stability to a human being. So therefore, you're going to be, that's the point where we all lay the foundation, and we keep building on the foundation. We keep trying to create something new. So that is how I've attempted to build in the root chakra and said that why is the root chakra important? And why is it that, and what I've done with every chakra is that I have related it to the corporate world and say, what are the lessons for a manager from each of these? So therefore, the root chakra is the base, which it has to be strong if you want to build anything stronger on top of it.
And one chakra which I find really interesting from creativity point of view is definitely the sacral chakra that you spoke about, which provides social integration and creativity in a company. So what ways do you think it really impacts the decision making and confidence in a leadership? I think that's very important.
Correct. So the 3 topics that I have covered in the sacral chakra or the Swadhisthana chakra is happiness, handling a tough adversary, and conquering fear. And really, this is also a place where you are able to invoke Shakti and you can infuse energy into everything that you are doing. And if you look at it in our own bodies, that's a chakra, which is where your reproductive organs are. So therefore, that's an important part of our body, because reproduction is something which is there for all human beings. But it's also a point where you are able to, for example, if you look at conquering fear, what is the very natural reaction when you are afraid? It's just below your stomach is where you feel there's a knotted kind of thing. So therefore, I've attempted to cover a lot of these subjects within these chakras, and therefore the sacral chakra becomes important for handling, happiness, handling a tough adversity or conquering fear. When we are happy, and you can see that, people always say when you're happy, you're laughing from your stomach or the area below that stomach. So our bodies are very similar to what we are doing when it comes to handling our companies as well.
And one of the, again, very relevant, and everyone talking about emotional intelligence and customer relations. So I think there the heart chakra comes in play. So how do you think businesses really can cultivate this? Because I think this is a very, very important chakra to improve upon their emotional intelligence and customer relations.
Correct. So under the heart chakra or the Anahata chakra, which I have categorized as the area that talks about emotional intelligence and accountability, I've spoken about honesty and corruption. I've talked about ego. I've talked about ethics, and I've talked about trust. And each one of these 4 areas is something where when we interact with one another in a work environment or in a social environment, each one of these, we've got to relate with the other person, and only if we are able to do away with our ego, only if we are able to have complete faith or trust in someone else, will the relationship with another individual, whether it's socially or whether it's with your subordinate, peer, or boss, will be able to evolve much, much strongly, much stronger.
And I think we can, there's so much in the book that we can talk about all the chakras, but obviously we don't have so much of time and people need to read this book. One, again, very important chakras, which we would talk about and then let people find out about other chakras from the book, is third eye chakra, definitely. And it really, you've talked about it improving the intuition and holistic awareness that you've talked about. So how do you think, how important is this? I always felt that people are blessed with intuition, people are blessed with sixth sense. But how do you develop it with this chakra? How can businesses really develop this?
Correct. So, the third eye is something which a lot of us would have heard. We hear a lot about Lord Shiva's third eye. And if he opens it, as they say in Hindi, wo puri dunya ko bhasm kar sakte hain. If that eye opens, so that power is there, in the third eye right here.
Yes.
It is also believed that this part of our head has a very highly focused set of nerves, which gives us the ability to be able to manage a lot of the communication, a lot of the interactions that we have with other people. And I have attempted to cover 4 topics in this particular area. One is gratitude. Second is duty. Third is career challenges. And fourth is listening. Each of these are very important factors when it comes to thinking about your third eye chakra, because when you're going to interact with someone, when you're wanting to communicate with someone, each of these are very important.
Yes.
I'm grateful that you are speaking to me, right? I find that there is, if I'm doing some work with you, there's a certain amount of duty that I'm supposed to be able to fulfill in order for me to be able to deliver what Neeta, as my boss, is expecting from me. We all face career challenges in all our lives, and those challenges we face all the time throughout our career. And the fourth one is most so critical, which is no communication is complete unless we are able to listen. And as has often been said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So therefore, we must listen twice as much as we speak. So therefore, it's very important for us to be able to dwell upon each of our chakras and then relate them with the company or organization that we are in.
Very right. But, we've spoken about, I mean, we normally talk about big corporates and everything, but with startup culture being so strong in India and so many startups and small businesses. So do you think how they can implement this principle of 7 chakras, and which is going to really benefit them in longer
So I think that The principles, Neeta, are no different, whether it's a large company or a small company or a startup. I think for a startup, it is even more relevant for them to be able to develop, uh, a focus or a culture around the chakras that, you know, that are there in a human body. And my own view is, well, I have attempted to cover as much as I could in one book. I mean, our scriptures are endless. So there is so much more that has to can be read and listened to. So people who read my book will be will be able to at least hope, or hopefully will be able to get excited enough to read some more about the scriptures. So whether it's a startup founder, whether it is someone who's working for a startup, there is a lot of knowledge that is available in the book that you can draw upon, and everything is relevant. We can choose to take some, we can choose to ignore some. There's nothing sequential about it. There is nothing which says that if you don't do this, you will not eat, you will not get the right end, so to speak. So that's the whole strength that we have had in Hinduism, that you have the ability to interpret your actions, whether it is for yourself or for your company, large or small, the way you think it is right.
So right. And even from the perspective of a book, I feel that you can pick up this book from anywhere and start anywhere and go back. It's not like that you miss out on something if you don't read something initially. You can pick up your own parts and perhaps go back again and read the entire book. That is what really I
Absolutely.
liked about it. And I must confess that I really read it in parts and went back
Thank you.
to those parts which I had not read later. So I didn't really find anything missing. Oh, I
Hmm.
missed out and I can't really follow it. But from
Yeah.
your point of view, which chakra do you think is most important from a business success point of view?
Well, I would say, depending on what stage of life your organization is in, if you are a startup, the first and the most base root chakra is probably the most important. If you are at a stage where you are a huge organization already, then your crown chakra may be important. Uh, Similarly, the crown chakra will may be more important for the founder of the company. The heart chakra may be more important for the senior or middle management of the company. I mean, I'm just making these statements, though I do believe that all seven chakras are valid for all every individual. But I'm just trying to draw parallel to answer your question, that there are different stages and ages and stages of human beings and organizations. And we can choose to draw upon whichever chakra we feel is most relevant for us at that particular point of time. So we may be faced with a situation where we are trying to figure out how to conquer fear, in which case our sacral chakra becomes more important. We may be in a situation where we are worried about what's going to happen to our work, right? Therefore, what's going to happen with our promotions, what's going to happen with our work culture. We may find that our throat chakra becomes more important. So as you said very correctly, you can pick up the book from any place and read what is relevant for you at that particular point of time.
Absolutely. And any upcoming project related to this book that you have in mind in future? Because I'm sure
Well,
it's
I do have some thoughts. I'd like to continue to build on this a little more.
yeah.
And it's always work in progress in my mind, because I really enjoy writing, and because I enjoy writing, I'm constantly trying to figure out what areas can I write on. And you would have seen all my 9 books are on completely different subjects.
Yes. But how do you balance your time between doing so much, between hosting your podcast, nearly 2,500 episodes, and you've done that, and writing for prominent publications, appearing on various TV as a TV panelist? How does it happen with you? How are you
You know,
managing
I've of-
chakras to be
I've
able to
often
balance out your life so well?
I've often said this for a long time, that time is really a state of one's mind. Uh, I'm happy to I sleep at 9, I wake up at 3:30, quarter to 4, and I've got enough things to do. So while I'm writing, I'm coach. Um, I still find 3 days a week to go and play my golf. So there are lots of things that one can do, and I've always found that the more one pushes oneself, the more time one gets. The more you lie around or keep procrastinating, the
Mm.
less time you give me. Then people always tend to say, "I have no time to do anything." I've always said I have all the time. Anybody wants to come and meet me, come and meet me. I'm always available, and it's entirely what you are at, or what your state of mind is.
And it's not only golf, you're so fond of music, as I read somewhere. And of course,
I play the flute, so
yeah,
I
you
keep
play the
45 minutes every. I play 45 minutes every day to practice my flute. I have a teacher who comes and teaches me. So
very inspirational. Very, I would say all your activities are so meditative, and I'm sure that's the reason why you're able to balance so well and, really give out so much of knowledge to people like us who are forever
you're
in
very
quest
kind.
of learning new things and learning about new things. And apart from that, you're on a podcast. I have to ask you because I think one of the most important successes has been, about the success of Guardian Pharmacy. I'm sure people will like to know what were the key factors that contributed to the success of Guardian Pharmacy being the second best pharmacy chain, or perhaps now the first. I'm not very sure about the figures, but that really
So
didn't matter. It's
I agree. What I think I'd love to get your viewers and listeners to understand my own thinking, and that is that anything you do, whether I started Guardian Pharmacy after 25 years in very large companies, or whether I started the brand called You from a single podcast 5 years ago. Uh, Number one, no work is small, right? So I know that I used to go in 2003, 2004, and I've swept floors of my stores. I've even I've gone and cleaned toilets because those people hadn't come and the staff wanted to use toilets. But what is important is that number one, no work is small. Number two, whatever you're doing, do consistently and to the best of your ability. Uh, if someone turns around and says that, have you done your best, and your answer is yes, uh, I think that is the only justification you will need. And I often tell my children something that my father had told me, that every morning when you are standing in front of the mirror, and if you can look yourself in the eye and say, yesterday I did not knowingly do anything wrong, and I did not knowingly harm anybody, that's the only justification you need to give to anyone in the world. Which means if I'm happy with my own work, my own behavior, that's all that I need to be worried about. So I think Guardian grew into what it is today because of a lot of people, because of a lot of effort that was put in by many, many team members of the company, and it continues to grow.
so right. And it's an inspiration. So what advice do you really give to the aspiring entrepreneurs? I mean, after 25 years of corporate sector and suddenly you decided, I know with your family support and you need that support definitely with
Mm.
anyone who ventures into entrepreneurial journey. It's a big risk that you take, especially when you've
Correct.
had such a wonderful, stable corporate career. And as you said, and I also read somewhere that the first store was a challenge, definitely. I mean, you doing everything that I've read about.
Correct.
So, what advice would you give to the aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders based on your diverse career experiences and
So my
the history?
Absolutely. Anita, it's a great question you've asked me. I think what I would say to a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs is that there is no time other than now to start if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Mm.
Having said that, entrepreneurial journey is not uh, a walk in the park. And as someone's told me, and that that if you once you become an entrepreneur, you have every right to be able to select which 18 hours of the day you want to work. So that flexibility you certainly can build in your schedule, but you do have to work. You will have to work 18 hours a day, and also remember that when someone suddenly says, "Oh, this organization has become a unicorn," and it is people don't realize that there's probably 10 or 12 years of work that has gone into building an organization that is now being seen by the outside world as a unicorn. So therefore, keep plugging away, do what you think is right, and if you're convinced about your idea, uh, do it now.
And one of the two last questions that I have for you, which is one really interests me a lot, since I'm also, though a new person in podcasting, not as pro as you, but what really inspired you to start the brand called You? I mean, it's an amazing podcast with 2,500 interviews. That's no
So I
mean.
started this, Neeta, with one simple hypothesis, and that was that when I was 22 years old in 1979 after my MBA, I was always looking for books of leaders, and very few books were available. Today, thousands of books are available, but the young people are getting their knowledge not by reading, but through podcasts and other means. So, my thing was, let me build the world's largest digital public library of knowledge, experience, and wisdom. So, I don't charge anything for my podcast. I fund it entirely myself. I have over 75,000 minutes of content. We're now experimenting with artificial intelligence to see if we can start translating this into multiple languages, to do searches across the 2,500 recordings that we have on our website. So by way of example, if there's a young person who wants to know what goes into building a brand, and they are able to use AI to be able to ask that question, there'll be some 250 answers to this one question from well-established entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and they can draw on that experience from there. So that's how it started. Today, I have spoken to people from over 62 countries. And what is very encouraging for me is that 74% of my viewers and listeners are under 34. 62% are in India, 29% in the US, and the balance spread all over the world. So it's just, started a snowball effect. And there are a lot of people who are now writing in from all over the world saying, how can we be on your podcast? So it's great fun. Every conversation that I have, I learn something new from them. And hopefully one of these days, maybe there's another book coming up on my learnings from my podcasts.
That we'll definitely look forward to, because it's happened in the same way with me, though I'm obviously much smaller. And so it's been all about, letting people know about different wonderful books which are there. So, of course, again, I'm not charging anyone anything. It's more to do with my also personal growth and meeting such wonderful people like you. Coming to the last question, because, I know you have a podcast recording today. And so coming back to the book, what key takeaway would you like the listeners and the readers to remember from your book?
Well, I think I would just hope that whoever picks up a copy of this book will start to appreciate that our roots have an incredible strength of knowledge, experience in our scriptures. And if I can get people to start to explore even a tiny little segment of some of our scriptures, I would be very, very happy, because I think, and when I was growing up, there was a bit of a disconnect that happened when I went overseas to study. But I'm just hoping that the younger people today will be able to reconnect with their roots that they've had for thousands and thousands of years, and start to learn. There is a lot of knowledge available. Take what you want, ignore what you don't want, and just carry on. So I'm just hoping people will be able to spend a little bit of time to start understanding our own scriptures.
Thank you so much for your kind words. It's been such a pleasure, such an insightful conversation with you. We've learned so much today. And definitely, 7 Chakras of Management All the best with your book. Already I hear very good things about it doing so well. There are a lot of people writing such amazing reviews. And I must tell our readers that the book we discussed today not only helps you to stay current, relevant, and effective in the modern workplace. I'm reading this from the book, using powerful ancient techniques, but also guides you towards harnessing the amazing healing powers and the energy of chakras. It's been wonderful having you today, Ashutosh.
Neeta, thank you so much for calling me, for inviting me. I really enjoyed my conversation with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.